Hello. It's your friend Capitalism is Liberty again. I hope you didn't miss me too much. By popular demand, I have gotten a brand spanking new pimped out voice. Pretty cool, eh? In this video I will talk about one of the worst things to ever happen in human history, the Russian Revolution. Basically, the Russian Revolution was a secretive coup d'etat which took place in 1917. It was unilaterally executed by a communist cult called the Bolshevik Party. The leader of the Bolsheviks, Vladimir Lenin, ruled the party with an iron fist. Invoking a principle that was Orwellianly called democratic centralism, Lenin stifled all dissent within his party. Besides Lenin, the only people who had any power in the Bolshevik party were Leon Trotsky, a man who rivals Adolf Hitler in his dictatorial ambitions, and Joseph Stalin, the rightful heir to the Soviet throne and Lenin's adopted son. These two men would later fight over who succeeded Lenin as dictator of the Soviet Union. More on that later. At the time, Tsar Nicholas II was the reigning monarch of Russia. Of course, anarchists are against the state, but we all agree that monarchy is much more libertarian than democracy. So in essence, anarchists take the position that it is better for a Tsar to rule than for the mob to rule. In 1917, the Tsar's regime was under attack by a group of communists and socialists who hated capitalism. In addition to this, Russia was being destroyed in the First World War. The royal family had avoided being crushed in the 1905 Russian Revolution, so this was nothing new to them. They figured that they could save capitalism by defeating a few enemies here and there. They had appeased the ignorant masses with a Duma, or parliament, and democratic tyranny was kept at bay. Russia's capitalism was beginning to develop almost unhindered. It seemed like the discontent over the war and the poor economy would simply boil over. What Tsar Nicholas underestimated was a communist conspiracy led by Lenin's cult. Lenin captivated his ignorant audiences with stirring speeches promising utopian things like peace, land, and bread. In March 1917, Tsar Nicholas got scared and abdicated. He was later arrested by a few retards. These retards were led by Alexander Kerensky, a socialist who didn't like Lenin. Kerensky and his idiot pals formed a provisional government. Most people in the provisional government said that they liked capitalism. But the truth is they only half liked capitalism. Where the Tsar had only used the Duma to appease the ignorant masses, Kerensky's government thought that Russia should have a more expansive parliament. Kerensky was pretty much the lesser evil for Russian capitalism. While he didn't want to abolish capitalism, he wanted to make a bunch of corporatist reforms. By August 1917, the heroic General Lava Kornilov was fed up with this corporatist bullshit. He mobilized his troops in an attempt to depose Kerensky. While Kornilov was wrong to violate the non-aggression principle, we must cut him a little slack here. I mean, he was desperate to stop communist tyranny. Honestly, I think Kornilov was a closet anarcho-capitalist. Tragically, Kornilov was defeated by Lenin's Red Guards. From this point on, Russian capitalist liberty was doomed. On October 25, 1917, Lenin forced a bunch of his Bolsheviks to storm the Winter Palace, the headquarters of the provisional government, in the capital city of Petrograd. The Bolsheviks took power and murdered most of the members of the provisional government. Later, Lenin established the dictatorship of the proletariat and handed all power over to the Soviets. The Soviets were these shitty things that communists set up and forced workers to participate in. In reality, Lenin basically declared himself dictator for life. Lenin's best friend Leon Trotsky signed a peace treaty with the Germans and ended Russia's involvement in World War I. Workers were then forced into slave labor, capitalists were executed without trial, and the Bolshevik government instituted one-party rule. The government took over the economy. All liberty was abolished by law. Lenin was so insane that he single-handedly assassinated the Tsar and his family. On July 17, 1918, Lenin personally mowed down the royal family all by himself. What a dick. Russian entrepreneurs did not go down without a fight. In 1918 they formed the White Army and began the Russian Civil War. The White Army was a group of libertarian military leaders. The Whites, as they were called, were joined by a few corporatist state armies. The Reds were on the defensive. For a moment it looked as if Lenin's dictatorship was about to fall, and at least some liberty would be reinstated. Unfortunately, Leon Trotsky was able to get some crazed idiots to fight the White Army. The Whites lost, and Russia lived under communism for most of the 20th century. This marked the end of Russian capitalist liberty. Lenin died in 1924. Since he was Lenin's best friend, Trotsky demanded to be installed as dictator for life. Little did he know, Lenin's adopted son, Joseph Stalin, had already taken power right after Lenin died. Many years later, Stalin's secret police found Trotsky in Mexico and killed him with an ice pick. Lol. Seriously? Who uses an ice pick? Stalin faithfully continued Lenin's work as dictator until his death in 1953. Stalin was the same thing as Lenin. The Russian Revolution provides some serious lessons for anarcho-capitalists. First, you can't defeat tyranny through war or aggression. Despite the libertarian virtues of the White Army, they failed because they initiated force. Also, it proves that capitalism is natural and Marx was a complete idiot. Workers didn't even do anything in the Russian Revolution. The revolution was led by a bunch of rich idiots like Lenin who forced a bunch of peasants to fight. Workers played a very minor role. I'm sure you won't hear any of this in your state education camp history courses, but there it is. The unfiltered truth.